Welcome to the Be All You Can Be MSC, a podcast dedicated to empowering Army Medical Service Corps officers and professionals like you. I'm your host, Stephanie Moore. Welcome to today's episode of the Be All You Can Be MSC podcast. So every once in a while, we come across names in our medical service community that resonate beyond the immediate circle of their work. And they are leaders who, even though we might not have met them personally, they have left an indelible mark on those around them. So today's guest is one such luminary. So I've heard her name being spoken about with admiration from both my mentors, peers, and even officers I mentor. So surprisingly enough, even in a casual conversation at home with my spouse, her name has popped up. So it's a testament to her outstanding reputation. And so it gives me great, immense pleasure and honor to introduce you to a leader who has a phenomenal reputation that precedes her, Lieutenant Colonel Bethany Ann Wagner. Welcome to the podcast, Beth.
Thank you so much. I appreciate for the invitation, and those are quite some accolades. Hopefully I live up to them, but no, I really appreciate the invitation.
No, thank you. So Beth, why don't you tell us a little bit about your Army experience?
Yeah, so my Army experience has not what I would consider be a traditional Army pathway. When I entered the Army out of ROTC, I was told, much as young officers do, that I'm going to go be a platoon leader, and then I'm going to go be a company XO, followed by a commander, and I would do a staff, and that's what I thought I was going to go do. And I received my orders to go to this thing called this Combat Support Hospital that was not in any of our ROTC doctrine. And when I got there, I was placed in a medical supply OIC position. Again, that was not what I was told I was going to do. But really, I think that it actually is funny because I have not left a staff position with the exception of company command ever since then. I have had primarily a staff career. All my leadership roles, with the exception of company command, have been as a chief or an OIC. Staff roles. And even my company command time, I was a company commander in a large MEDAC. And although Title 10 authority as a commander, it was still very staff heavy, just due to the nature of it being in a hospital. I think that my career I'm a really good staff officer. I actually really enjoy it. I'm probably one of the few officers out there that can say I've had a successful career as a staff officer, and I love it.
I appreciate you sharing that. And if anything, I think it's refreshing because the reality is, I think less than 15% of lieutenant colonels go on to be battalion commanders. So the reality is, as we move up in our career, we are going to be very staff heavy in our assignment. To me, it's refreshing to hear. And also, caches have a special place in my heart because I was a first-time staff officer, was 14th cache for me. The combat support hospitals were an amazing experience and assignment. So I'd be curious because I brought you on to talk about being a 70 Foxtrot, which is a health service human resources for area of concentration. So what does that AOC focus on?
Yeah, so in the simplest term, it focuses on the people. 70 Foxtrot focuses on the life cycle, the human resource management life cycle, from entry to exit and everything in between. Typically, we think of 70 Foxtrots as your S1s. They create the evaluation and award trackers. They submit the per stat. And from a surface level, that's what we believe 70 Foxtrots do. We don't give them oftentimes much more credit beyond that. But let me extend that a little bit. Foxtrots really focus on teams and solution to personnel problems. For example, it's easy to say, let me send you this body to fit into this slot. Yay, we have 100% of all of our people. But a Foxtrot takes a look at that team and they go, yeah, you may have 100 people, but that doesn't meet the mission. For 70 Foxtrot, specifically in the healthcare community, we worry about the components. For example, getting a surgeon doesn't help a unit's readiness if they don't have the support staff, the nursing staff, the tech staff, the rehabilitative staff to ensure the full employability of that surgeon. And so that body is useless if we can't develop the entire team or get the entire team in order to support that healthcare mission and really support what that readiness is doing. That's what the 70 Foxtrots do. There are 113 medical specialties across the officers and the enlisted, and we have to know exactly what each one of them do, how they do it, and we have to be able to explain those intricacies to commanders so that way they can maximize the talent within their formations. When you think about it, a 70 Foxtrot is the primary employee-centric heartbeat. Everything that is needed by an employee, whether it's military, civilian, or contract, comes out of HR. And so if it touches that personnel action, whether it's strength or planning or fill in the blank, we are the central point for that.
So I think you just taught me something new because I did not realize we had 113 medical specialties. I really appreciate how you broke it down with the focus on teams and solutions for personnel problems, because in doing a little bit of research, which I will admit I had to do some research on, really looking more in depth on what a 70 Foxtrot brings to the fight. And it highlighted that there were 8 personnel management life cycle functions, which were the strength, accounting, maintenance of personnel records, personnel requisitioning, reassignments, reenlistments, promotion, casualty reporting, eliminations, awards, and decorations. But I appreciate how you're framing this because it makes it more actionable in my mind. So I'm curious, why did becoming a 70 Foxtrot truly resonate with you?
When I came into the Army, I really wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. I knew I was a medical service corps officer, but I didn't know what that looked like. I was a medical supply officer at first. I knew that didn't fit well. That wasn't who I was. And I thought, oh gosh, I don't really know what else I'm supposed to be doing. And then I became a company XO. And again, I just thought, yeah, I don't really know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I applied to PA or Physician's Assistant School, the program, or IPAP. And I didn't get selected, but I remember during the application process, I had to beg my S1 at the time, probably no less than 10 times, to update my ORB. And every time she would grab my ORB, sort of roll her eyes, dump it into her little file fax, and I always thought, gosh, this must be a really hard thing to do. But more importantly, I hated the way it made me feel. I felt like I wasn't important. And on the very last day that I could absolutely mail, because at the time it was snail mail, the application, I had to beg her to update my ORB. And she punched the keypads, eye rolled, and tisks, and all of those things that just really make you feel like you're a valuable customer. She stamped it, gave it to me. I ran and I put the package in the post, and I didn't get it. And I just was really deflated. And I remember walking away one day going, if I could just figure out how to update an ORB, I feel like I would be better. And it all started with an ORB. And so my company commander had come to me several months later and said, hey, the boss needs a Battalion S1. Do you want to do it? Yes, I want to do it because I have to know how to update an ORB. That's all I cared about. And so the woman who had showed me was not the woman who had taken care of my ORB. It was somebody else, excuse me. And she said, what do you want to learn first? I said, show me how to update an ORB. And I remember her laughing and saying, well, that's really weird. She showed me, and for anybody who has ever been an S1 who has operated within the system called TOPNS, it was the easiest thing. And it took seconds, and I was mad. I was so mad. And I made a vow from that day forward that anytime an officer or a service member or soldier came into my office and needed a record update, as long as I was really not doing anything that was more priority than that, I would stop what I was doing and I would update their record. And I kid you not, the reason why is I didn't want anybody to leave my office feeling the way that I felt when I was trying to apply to a program. And that I've stood on that ground. I've stood on that moral my entire Army career, to even include when I came up to HRC. As long as I had the ability to update a record, I would. And I just think that the 70 Foxtrots, S1s, the 42s, whomever is delivering human resources in organizations, we are a force multiplier. We can be a distraction in information without you even realizing it. Because if we are not taking care of our customers, the soldiers who are delivering their job, we will harm your organization, just as that S1 did for me when all I wanted to do was apply to that program and she would not update my ORB. And I remember that every time I'm in a bind or I question if what I'm doing is right or if I'm delivering quality customer care. Am I delivering the kind of customer care that I would have been proud to receive on the back end? And that is what always frames me about being a human resources professional.
Well, thank you for sharing that very heartfelt and powerful story. I wish you would have been my S1 on multiple occasions. Delving into that, then, I think you talked a little bit with inadvertently, but what are the characteristics and skills of a successful 70 Foxtrot?
A 70 Foxtrot has to advocate for the command's goals, and they have to advocate for service members' goals or the formation goals. And because of that, I think that the characteristic of a successful 70 Foxtrot is somebody who is flexible and an effective communicator, meaning that they can explain complex things at an elementary level. They have to be organized. There's too much information for you to be a disorganized person. You have to be assertive, confident, competent, and empathetic all at the same time. Because everybody knows how to be an S1 until nobody knows how to be an S1. Again, there's a lot of assumptions about what 70 Foxtrots or S1 people do. And the moment it doesn't go that way, they need us to come in and save it. And so that's why you have to be and pull a chair up to the table and say, I got this. They have to have a desire to learn and know what the other staff functions do. I believe that, like any profession, you have to have situational awareness. You also have to have high emotional intelligence. You have to have the ability to translate the people strategy into actionable outcomes that support those command goals. And I think that those particular characteristics and skills really define a successful 70 Foxtrot.
I appreciate that. And in my opinion, as a customer, I definitely think like you resonated with why you became customer service focused, which I know sounds odd in the Army, but I'm adding my little plug on what I think a good one brings to the table, or 70 Foxtrot. So I'm curious because I think when folks think about a 70 Foxtrot, they think primarily on the staff roles. And I think sometimes it gets lost and you think of 70 Foxtrots at Human Resources Command, but 70 Foxtrots play a critical role in the operational force. And so I would love if you could delve into how the 70 Foxtrot role ties into the critical staff process of MDMP, military decision-making process, and the medical operations planning.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my favorite things about being a 70 Foxtrot beyond providing customer service is the medical planning, or is the HR plan. There, in the medical community, we have our medical operational planners, our 70 hotels. HR, especially if you read some of our guiding doctrine, we have HR planners. And so it's a lot of fun because we articulate HR operations and the requirements to support the commander's mission. Our planners, we consider how information impacts HR support to each phase of a military operation. We consider frequency of occurrence for the HR tasks. We do casualty estimating reporting. We take a look at replacement procedures to include what that time to fill is going to be. As part of the sustainment cell, which is typically where you're going to find any S1, battalion, brigade, division, we must remain engaged in those operations, and we have to maintain situational understanding so we can better support our subordinates or our supported units, because a lot of times they won't be our direct subordinate. They'll be a DRU, or they'll have some sort of attachment direction for us. And we've got to make sure that we define what those relationships with. When you take a look at the base org, we're a heavy author in Annex A, which is task organization. We also write portions of Annex F, which is sustainment, and we specifically write Appendix 2, which is the Personnel Service Support Appendix. Within those various appendixes and annexes, we define those command relationships. We identify other supportive relationships. We create the force manning plans, identify the accounting and strength reporting. We consider those HR automation support requirements, especially for some of our outposts. And we develop contingencies as well because, hey, HR automation can sometimes go down, so we always are developing contingency plans. We also develop HR service support, which Probably what more people understand includes military pay and entitlements. We issue CACs, and then not commonly known, but also we support postal operations. So heavy involvement and a wide breadth of HR support within medical operations and MDMP.
I appreciate you breaking it down, especially with regards to the annexes and appendixes in the op order. I think, at least in my personal experience, what I've seen is oftentimes, and this is no hit on the S3 operations, but sometimes they get so busy that don't necessarily fully staff an operations order. It seems like the human nature is to focus on medical operations and then send it over to log for this concept of support, but then sometimes I've seen where the personnel portion is missing, and like you said, it's very heavy with regards to human resources aspect. I'd be curious because you mentioned some of the skill sets, so casualty estimate reporting and learning what goes in these appendixes. Where is a good place for new 70 Foxtrots or aspiring 70 Bravos to get some of that education?
Yeah, so I do want to mention I want to back up a little bit. You had talked about some of the annexes that are missing. What I have found generally is that plans writes it for me. And I had mentioned earlier about what a characteristic of a successful 70 Foxtrot was: assertive. I will never let somebody else write my annexes or my appendixes. That is my job, that is my profession and my expertise. And tying some of those characteristics in, you have to guard your lane a little bit as well. And when it comes to writing some of these things, that's where that characteristic really comes into play, or that skill, that competency, because that's yours. And when it goes wrong, no one's going to look at anybody else. They're going to come and looking at you. So own it and write it. I really love FM 10. It is the R's Bible. I think that's the best place. I actually have a printed copy of it, and I've taken a spiral bound copy of that, tabbed it out, and I have brought it everywhere that I have been. We have a lot of differences from the AG community, but for the baseline personnel service delivery, that is our Bible. And then from there, it's just getting into the different FMs and getting with mentors to understand how to do some of those casualty estimates.
I appreciate that. And for all the listeners out there, I will make sure to link the FM out there for you that you can also find in Army pubs, but we'll make it easier for you all to pull up the HR Bible and put it in your pocket.
Yeah.
Speaking of 70 Foxtrots and different assignments, what unique opportunities are there specific for 70 Foxtrots in the Army?
I had mentioned earlier that one of what HR focuses on, or 70 Foxtrot focuses on, is HR management from entry to exit. Entry is recruiting. I wish when I was younger, I knew how many 70 Foxtrot opportunities there were within recruiting. We have AMEDD recruiting OCs and AMEDD recruiting company commanders all over the country, or all over the United States and Meritorious, and I would have loved to know that there were unique opportunities in my home state of Arizona, up in Illinois, where my spouse is from. And I just thought, how neat would it have been for a couple of years to be close by family, recruiting the Army doctors or nurses. I had no idea those existed until I got to HRC. When you think about that, I got to HRC well into my field grade years, and I had no clue that those existed. So take advantage of recruiting opportunities. As 70 Bravos can do those as well. It's a really good foot in the door to understand a different HR experience that goes beyond processing trackers or sitting in cubs or bubs and briefing what your stereotypical S1 functions are. We also have a couple of positions at the AMEDD Personnel Proponent Directorate. We have a Medical Service Corps Personnel Proponent Officer, and we have an Enlisted Personnel Proponent Officer, which are 70 Foxtrot unique opportunities. But more importantly, those are building the benches, because we have an 06 opportunity to be the director of that entire directorate, which is a strap billet. So I think that's pretty neat that you have an opportunity to do some life cycle modeling for our enlisted MOSs as well as our officer medical service corps specialties.
Yeah, and
We
that's a
have,
really unique assignment, real quick,
yeah.
because I've had the opportunity to work with folks from APPD, and I guess the best way to me to describe that assignment, it's almost like you're looking behind the curtain of Oz to see, oh, this is why you have 270 hotels in the Med Brigade, or whatever the breakdown and ratio is. You can't change one without it affecting all the units across the Army. And it's very insightful, the work that APPD does. So I don't think they get enough credit for all the hard work they do.
No, I completely agree with you. I think I learned a lot when I was an intern at APPD. I learned that a lot that while C did developed these really great concepts and plans of Army units, the APPD component of that was, hey, can we do this? How does an AOC remain life? How do they make sure that they're relevant throughout the life cycle model that the Army has made, not just in the active component, but in the reserves and in the National Guard as well? Because when you change one compo, you have to change all the others. And I had no clue that how any of that force structuring worked, or the different models that we use to make sure that any given AOC has life beyond a 5, 10, 15, 20-year life cycle model. And I just loved it. Loved doing force management.
Yeah, and also the infamous histogram for all the listeners out there is actually produced by APPD, and it is a force management tool or an inventory management tool. It is not the tool you should use to pick what AOC you want to be so that you're promoted quickly.
Yes, yeah, very good plug there. I completely agree with you, and it will never predict promotion.
No, very true. So I didn't mean to jump in there, Beth, but I thought it was important to highlight because APPD, I think I did not know what it was until I was a senior captain because I had an opportunity to work at the Capabilities Development Integration Directorate. But I think if you don't have those opportunities, I know there are senior field grades that do not know what APPD is. So I appreciate you letting me jump in there.
Yeah. And you take a look at some of the skills, and you've got to know where some of your strengths and or passions are. And if you are a salesperson, if you are somebody who are just is can talk and sell folks, and you are passionate about getting people to understand the Army story and how they could have value of joining, recruiting, please go do it because we need you. And there are people out there that you have the talent to go get the next Army finest officer in whatever the medical specialty is. But if you are a data driven individual who maybe not necessarily does the data mining, but you love to analyze data and come up with interpreting and solutions, which is what I really love, APPD is a place for you. You will enjoy your time so much there. I'm not an ORSA person, but I love data and I really enjoy seeing the picture that it can present, and APPD certainly does that. Another unique opportunity is the DA Secretariat, which is here at HRC, but it's downstairs in the tag. And we have a board recorder. In fact, the AMEDD is the only branch, 70 Foxtrots are the only branch that has a dedicated board recorder. And so all of the other board recorders that are down there are immaterial positions for the active component category. So they're all O1 or O2 alphas. We have our own. And so somebody who has to be very organized, excited about getting into the regulation and understanding how that impacts some of our boards in building those relationships with these officers who come in and sit boards. The DA Secretariat Board Recorder is the place to be. 70 Bravos. In fact, just a quick little plug, we do have one out there right now. We're trying to fill it. And then again, Build the Bench. We have a position in the Directorate of Military Personnel Management, which is called the DMPM. That's located in the Pentagon and headquarters DAG1. So when you take a look at some of these building block positions, the DA Secretariat Board Recorder is good for a captain, and the DMPM position is really great for a major or lieutenant colonel. So we try to do a very good job in the 70 Foxtrot community of finding these unique opportunities that allow you a foot in the door first, so you can then become our talent pool later in some of these more senior graded positions.
great. So that's a really good stepping stone. I appreciate how you threw that out there, because a lot of times officers are like, what prepares me for that role? So I appreciate you highlighting that. And it's interesting to me, the board recorder. So I feel like that's the person who's the secret keeper. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my goodness, the things they must see and know from that
Yes.
position. I can only imagine how insightful that is.
For a 70 Bravo who's looking for a unique opportunity and maybe a chance to see a different component of being a 70 Foxtrot, that's a job to consider. Imagine coming out of that job and going into a company command position. You will be so well prepared to manage your formation just from a personal standpoint. The answers that you will be able to have, the mentorship that you can provide your young officers is going to be next to none. It's going to be amazing. Good job for that. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is you had LTHET opportunities. The 70 Foxtrot community several years ago, we led this big effort to revamp our LTHET internships. And so we got rid of the GRE requirement for most of our school choices because that's in line with what a lot of education platforms were doing. But we developed additional internship opportunities for captains all the way up through lieutenant colonel. We saw the value of continuing to invest in our own officers. And for example, we introduced a new internship that was 6 months within USAREC and 6 months at HRC. And so we'll split since both headquarters are here at Fort Knox. Whoever decides to go into that internship will create a rotation for 6 months for you to understand USAREC and then 6 months for you to understand HRC. And then we'll give you an assignment at either one of those headquarters following that. We developed senior internships at headquarters DAG1, at the J1 as well. So we're trying to continue to invest into the 70 Foxtrot community beyond what maybe you can see through PAM 600-4. We want you to know that 70 Foxtrot is a viable career path outside of just your transactional HR roles, which is at the battalion, brigade, or even at the MEDCOM level.
No, I really appreciate you highlighting that. Internships are phenomenal opportunities, and I'm jealous. I would love to know more about USAREC, because I actually, before we started recording, I was telling you about areas where I am still learning and have had to try to help and coach officers when I don't even know the information quite. And so trying to reach out and get that information, I mean, what an invaluable insight that internship offers. So can I sign up?
Sure. We just put your AOC transfer. We'll work on your consultant and you can become a 70 Foxtrot and then you can go to that.
So the other thing that you mentioned, and I just wanted to bring it back around, is you mentioned that you enjoyed data analytics, and you real quick out there, you threw an acronym out. So you mentioned that you're not an ORSA. And so I just wanted to lay it out for the audience. So an ORSA is a functional area. It's an operations search and systems analyst. So they are school trained, and they do all levels of statistical modeling and simulations tools to do an informed data-driven decision. And the Medical Service Corps Chief is opening up opportunities this year if you want to go and get school trained to become an ORSA, because the Medical Service Corps is in dire need of ORSAs, believe it or not. So I just wanted to put in a plug there for a unique opportunity that is opening up. And I want to say one is actually going to be at Carnegie Mellon.
The 70 Foxtrots have an LTHET School of Choice ORSA program that should you desire to go be an ORSA, the 70 Foxtrots will send you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for highlighting that.
Yeah.
All right, Beth. So, any more opportunities that are unique to Foxtrots that you want to highlight?
I think those are the ones that I'd really like to highlight.
Okay.
Of course, if any officers have interest in other opportunities, they can always reach out to me. I'll make myself available day and night because it's important to highlight or at least answer questions about what other jobs may be of interest, especially for some of our younger officers.
Absolutely. And I know that in this marketplace right now, there are some recruiting opportunities. And like you mentioned, that coveted board recorder position, for all our listeners out there, take a look, because you still have about three and a half more weeks till the marketplace closes. So we're going to shift gears, Beth. Let's have a little bit of fun. So what is the best career advice you've ever received or given?
Yeah, believe it or not, my husband has given me my best career advice. And it's, what do you want your Army story to be? Several years ago, many years ago, I sat in an LPD listening to a 3-star general officer tell me how his career was over 3 different times. And he had highlight. The first was when he passed on an assignment to support his wife's career goals. Another was when he decided to pass on an assignment because it wasn't right for his kids. And then he had passed on another assignment for, I can't recall the reason, but I remember talking to my husband about it. He goes, yeah, because you got to figure out what your Army story is going to be. And I say that, I want to try to expand that a little bit more. So people will always tell you what right looks like or what is success because some model says it. But really what they're doing is they're regurgitating what the doctrine said, or they're regurgitating what their career path is, or what they have observed somebody that they believe is successful is. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's a successful story for you. You don't always have to be a combat commander or a commander for that matter if you don't desire to be. You have to be able to walk away from the Army saying, you know what, I was successful, so let me offer you what mine was. My Army success story is I really wanted to make Lieutenant Colonel, and I wanted to be able to retire at 20 years with my family still by my side, not bitter at me and thriving. I've made a lot of career decisions as a result of keeping them in focus. My husband is in the military too, and I wanted to make sure that it wasn't always my career that was getting the preferential assignment. I wanted to be able to step back to the side and not have him be bitter at me because he couldn't take an assignment opportunity. And so when I say bitter, I never wanted my family to look at me and go, God, I didn't get to do X, Y, and Z because of you, because you put the Army first. And so for me, I'm really proud that at the end of my time, I've listened to my kids. They said, hey, we don't want to move right now. Okay, I got that. No problem. I can still find a lot of reward in what I do where I'm at. And I'm great with that. And you have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, do I find myself to be successful? Was it a certain amount of years that you served? Was it a certain amount of or rank that you achieved? Is the a dream assignment that if it came up, that's the job that when you walked away from the service, because the time will come to walk away, that you can go, this is what I wanted my Army story to be. And for me, I always wanted to be able to, once I figured it out, and it was a few years in the service that I figured it out, but I wanted to have it all. I wanted to be able to feel like I had a confident and good Army career, and I wanted the man that I married to still be by my side with the family that we chose to have together. So that's the best advice that I can ever give and that I have ever received. I don't believe that your Army career is over just because you didn't do 1 or 2 things.
I appreciate you sharing that very special best advice you've received and that you now give, because it definitely resonates for me. And I think thank you for sharing your story. I think it's very powerful. And I think, like you said, you don't have to be all the things. And so thank you. Right. See, I got to focus myself because you really touched my heart there. All right. So, our last fun question. Tell us a fun fact about you. And if you don't know one, you can just tell us your favorite ice cream.
Okay. So, I think my fun fact about me is my mom was in the Army. She was an Army Nurse Corps officer. She retired out as a lieutenant colonel. But when she had me, we were at Fort Carson. So, I was born at Fort Carson, Colorado. And at that very same hospital, I did my company command in, and while in company command, I had my firstborn child. And so I think the fun fact about me is that that Army legacy runs through, but our roots somehow tie back into Fort Carson. And so Fort Carson's hospital will be such a special place because I was born there, I commanded there, and I gave birth there. And so I think that's my fun story.
Aw, thanks. I think that's amazing and special. So very cool. Now you have to just, when your daughter gets older, you got to go there and take a picture of yourself and your daughter and your mom with your picture on the wall.
Right?
Well, Beth, it's been a true pleasure. I know now why you have such a phenomenal reputation, and it's a pleasure to finally get to talk to you and connect. So thank you so much for coming on and joining us.
This was a real treat for me. So thank you so much for the invite.
Well, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for joining us. Don't miss the next episode of the Be All You Can Be MSC podcast. Subscribe now and join our vibrant community of ambitious professionals who are taking their careers to the next level. The opinions shared on this podcast are the personal opinions of the guests and the hosts. They do not reflect the official position of the Medical Service Corps, the Department of Defense, or the U.S. government.